The default one, not that great. The recommended one, much better. But again, if you're going to install something and use it in a sensitive environment and you're worried about security, take the time or hire somebody to take the time to look it over and set it up in a certified, maintainable, correct fashion. So a little bit about your code itself and how you should handle how you're writing your actual code. You know, style and design. We just got off Fashion Week here, so you know there's a lot to it as far as to write good applications and to write good code. Be explicit. Again, PHP will let you get away with murder, and then somebody comes back to you and it will haunt you. So, you know, don't abuse the variables, don't abuse the types of variables. It's a loosely typed language, but that doesn't mean you don't need to worry about what your type of data is that you're dealing with. Don't abuse scope. Don't use global variables because they're handy and they're there. Know where your data is coming from. Again, stay away from the magic. It's black magic, it's voodoo. It's going to be depreciated in I think version 6, so it's going away anyway. If you're dependent on it, you'll have a major upgrade headache. Be explicit. Keep your code small. Use OO techniques so that you know how your code is interfacing with each other. You know, don't write spaghetti code. This should be nothing new. The better code that you are, and the stricter you are, the less security issues you'll have. And this should be nothing new, but I think people forget it when it comes to PHP. So I want to make sure that we reiterate it. Don't use the super globals. This is your #1 source of dirty data. Use something that wraps it, that protects you from raw data coming from some unknown source. I mean, let's not forget, when you're writing a web application, the guy who's doing something bad is not using a web browser. So JavaScript, validation, assuming certain forms will come over, that's all goes out the window. So if you have your head in this, expect anything, be aggressive. This was a quote from an old song. Be aggressive and you know, take control of what your data is that you're bringing into your application. So here we go back to the data. Again, it's all about the data, because this is what can poison your application in endless ways, as well as poison your database, which is probably worse than poisoning your application. So PHP is loosely typed. Again, going back to that flip side of it's its greatest thing and its biggest weakness as well. You can leverage loosely typed languages to be fairly typed languages using casting. Don't force PHP into thinking trying to guess what you want from your variables. If you want a string, cast it to a string. If you want an integer, make sure it's an integer. These are very easy programming practices, but will save you know, 95% of dirty data sources. Do it explicitly. Don't let PHP kind of pour things into your application from the outside. Anybody here that remembers register globals knows the exact problem that causes. While a very nice, easy idea, so were open relays before there was spam. So, you know, don't do it. Again, more data. Keep tabs on your whole data's life cycle, where it's coming in, what it's doing within your application, and then finally where it's going, how it's being persisted. Is it going to a database? Is it going to the file system to execute a command? All things that need to be continually thought of, perhaps more so than some of the basic little performance tunings that people tend to do a lot of. One thing that I always find amusing in any language, and especially PHP, is that people will try to save every little cycle when programming. Most people will never get enough traffic that will ever really make a difference. Focus more on your data, where it's going, what it's doing, and escaping it properly. Throwing big exceptions if something is horribly wrong is much more important than performance. We're not all running Google here, and security is often much more important than performance. And again, casting, know the types of data, know if it's an int, know if it's a float, know if it's a string, know if it has anything aside from alphanumeric characters in it. Does it have quotes, new lines? All these things are important when you're moving data around between, let's say, the web browser, the database, the command line, into another extension that maybe is not used to handling multi-byte code. All things to be aware of. And don't be lazy, which unfortunately PHP does not force you to do, but it is good practice. This is a no-brainer. If you're going to deploy PHP or anything into a big important environment, you should have people who support that big important environment. No system has one fault. There's often many faults. In fact, there's always many faults. That's why hackers are hackers and not accountants. They don't go in one path. They go through 1,000 little other small paths. So all those paths need to be hardened and need to be considered and need to be managed. When you do so and you put PHP or you put the whole AMP stack in that environment, it responds very well. And again, I point to some of the very large sites out there, both high social networking sites, media sites, financial sites, medical sites, all of which, when you give it the TLC, it responds very well to. So conclusions. Get different backup software. PHP is just one of the guys out there on the playing field as far as technology goes. It's just part of the entire ecosystem of security and web application development and internet programming. PHP has had a little bit of a rocky history, but it's grown up very quickly, and with the proper nurturing and TLC, it will continue to be improving. I have a Spider-Man's uncle quote. I forgot his name, so I think everybody knows where that comes from. PHP gives you a lot of great power, a lot of great flexibility, but you have to be responsible with that flexibility. Overall, the web is a dangerous place, and the internet is a dangerous place. There's all these things that can happen to you. I saw a talk earlier on a gentleman who was talking about browsers, and he made a lot of excellent points, none of which, frankly, as a PHP developer, is my problem. So PHP is the least of your worries and can be the best of your friends if you use it in the right way. Yes, sir?
I have a question for you. Do you think that Owasp's use of MediaWiki as the primary application on the site is, or could be, an explicit endorsement of the language for general content?
I'm sorry, we had a door problem.
Sure. So is Owasp's use of MediaWiki and PHP on their site kind of an implicit endorsement that the promise of the PHP language?
Sure. And not to take anything away from OWASP, but so is Facebook, so is the New York Times, so is many countless others.
So are you aware of any lessons that can be learned from MediaWiki's access control, or what makes MediaWiki stand out as something that succeeds where a lot of other things have failed? Any comments on that?
Okay, well, MediaWiki, let's separate for one thing Wikipedia and MediaWiki. And obviously why it's become a kind of cultural phenomenon is one thing. Let's focus on